I decide I'm going to let this stuff sit. I'm going to stand over here and I'm going to light a cigarette. Well, I didn't know anything about fumes. The whole porch went up in flames. And I had 18-foot flames up the front of this woman's house. While she's watching Oprah with the curtains open, the whole front of her house is on fire. Now, the whole front of her house was black. She's just watching TV.
So did she never know that you set her house on fire?
She never knew.
She never knew.
She never knew.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise, and in this show, I'm going to be interviewing entrepreneurs and other people who are not only crushing it in business, but they have also struggled with addiction in the past and are currently in long-term sobriety. And be sure to subscribe if you like what you're hearing so that you can get notified each time we put out a new episode. With me today is John Burns. John's the VP of Operations at Stella Blues Vapors in St. Louis, Missouri, and a member of the John Maxwell Team, as well as someone who has been sober a little bit shorter than I've been alive since 1989. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew, and it's an honor to be on your show. And the brief time we've been friends, it's really been an honor to connect with you, and I've really appreciated that connection. And I hope that we have a long and ongoing friendship in the future as well. Yeah,
absolutely. It's one of those times where there's a ton of people on Facebook, hey, looking to do this, starting to do that, and just context for the people that don't know, being in the John Maxwell group, there's a secret group of people who are in the mentorship program. And John had posted, hey, I'm starting a mastermind group on 15 invaluable laws of growth if you want to participate. And I was just like, well, I'm going to be starting one in my company in a couple of weeks. I'll hop on and see what it's about. And it was just incredible. And you said that was your first one, right?
Yeah, I've never done one before, had no idea really how they operate. So you talk about 8 seconds of fear. I probably had 2 days of fear leading up to that.
So the 8 seconds of fear, you want to elaborate on that a bit for the people that don't know?
Well, a good friend of mine related to me that in any instance where you have fear, it lasts for 8 seconds. So when you put that into perspective, that's a pretty brief amount of time to be afraid of anything.
And so the 2 days leading up to it, you're full of fear. And then would you say probably 8 seconds into it?
Oh, yeah.
You were good to go?
Well, I was good to go mainly because you don't have a choice. I had you on virtual and a couple other people on virtual, and I had 4 or 5 people sitting at a table in my shop. So it was kind of like, well, there's no turning back. You got to roll with it.
Yeah, and the timing wasn't even great for me either. I just felt bad not going to it. My wife was in the hospital. It wasn't anything serious, but I'm doing this mastermind group. She's in the bed asleep. I'm trying to, with a bunch of strangers while I'm in the hospital on video chat, saying, relaying my experience with the first law of growth. So, John, take us back. What's going on in your life? How did growing up look like for you? What led to your addiction? Do you think that you were born with it? Did something happen to cause it to happen? What's sort of your story?
I don't really think it was any certain part of that. I think it was probably a combination of all of them. The first 2 years of my life, actually my grandma raised me because my mom was too overwhelmed to deal with a baby. She was 18. And it was unexpected, so forth and so forth. And to put in perspective, this was the late 60s. That was real taboo to be a single unwed mother having a child out of wedlock, basically. That being said, eventually my mom scooped me up. She subsequently ended up marrying my dad, who was a raging, crazy, violent alcoholic on all levels. Pretty much from the gate, I guess you could say, I never really had a foundation of stability. So I definitely think that played a factor then, and I think it certainly plays even a factor today. Hence, my very strong pursuit of personal growth, because ultimately, everybody's had rough things happen in their lives. none of us can sit here and say you haven't had anything bad happen in your lives. It's just not realistic. How we deal with that bad, that's our responsibility. And that's how I look at things today. Personal growth is my responsibility. I could sit in a meeting or a self-help group and I could blame Andrew, I could blame my mom and dad, I could blame my sister, I could blame the damn school I went to. You see where I'm going with this? I could blame 1,000 different reasons to justify where I'm at that day.
Yeah.
The difference today is I choose for myself to expand and stretch with personal growth because I don't want to be a victim. There's no gain in being a victim. To sit there and just swim around in all of life's bad experiences. And I'd much rather grab what I can out of those life experiences and maybe help other people to see that even despite all those things, there is so much greatness beyond. If you look at where my life started, when I first got sober, down in the streets of Southwest Florida, living in a real shithole halfway house for men in Naples, Florida, to where I'm at now, it's a million miles. I would have never believed anyone, Andrew, in a second when I first got sober, if they said, you do this, this, and that, which in a sense is personal growth, and all these things will open up for you.
Yeah.
Someday you'll be married. Someday you'll have children and a home. And I'm not saying that those are things that are guaranteed to you, but these were just the possibilities that people that had walked before me shared with me through their experiences because they had already walked the path that I was beginning to walk down. It's just amazing, almost unable to comprehend almost 30 years ago where I started out at.
Yeah.
And to where I'm at now.
What prompted you to get sober? Were you just sort of, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to give this a try. Or did something happen to kind of push you into that world? They usually say you don't end up in recovery on accident. There's usually something terrible behind it.
Yeah, and there was. It's interesting that you share. At the time, I was living in St. Louis. I had a thriving painting and contracting business with my brother. The significance of that is we were both raging alcoholics. I didn't really do many drugs, so to speak. I liked a little pot here and there. Frankly, it made me paranoid. If you had speed, I would definitely take some speed. That and alcohol were like the perfect mix for me. We lived in probably one of the roughest neighborhoods in North St. Louis. We both carried guns, and we looked for trouble anywhere we could get it, any form or shape we could get it. But all that bravado and blah, blah, blah being said, I had reached a point with drinking that, frankly, I was probably suicidal from day to day. I would have good spells, but there were many moments where taking that 357 and putting it to my head sounded like an easier option because it was feelings I was very familiar with as far back as I can remember, as I just never fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Never felt right. I never fit in. No amount of money, success, awards, accolades ever filled that hole within me. Never did. Alcohol did temporarily. However, every morning you got to wake up and look at that same person again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how I had gotten sober a year prior for 30 days, just a 30-day window. My uncle had 12-stepped me. I was sober for a little less than 30 days. At that time, my sister was living on the streets down in Southwest Florida, drug house hopping. She was 14. And so with my newfound sobriety and big book and resolve in hand, I jumped on a plane to go save my sister. And subsequently, after going through several drug houses, having guns held on me, what have you, I finally tracked her down and was able to get her into a teenage treatment center. Funny thing is, I jumped on a plane, I flew back to St. Louis, and this ties into personal growth, whether you're in some type of program, support group, counseling, what have you. It all ties back to personal growth. The thing is I wasn't working on my personal growth in that 30 days.
Were you just sort of the dry drunk where you hadn't been drinking, but your life was still a disaster even with that?
It was a disaster. And so I flew home. Immediately after landing, I jumped in my truck. I drove to 7-Eleven and I bought 240 ounces of Bud Light. And I sat in the front of that 7-Eleven, dumping those bottles down me. I remember this family all glued to the glass in the car to my right because the beer was running down my face, down my shirt, because I could not get it in me quick enough for that relief. And I just remember the whole front of me, my lap, everything was just covered with beer. And this whole family, I don't know, there was like 4 or 5 people with their kids, were like glued to the side windows. Like, what in God's name is this guy doing? He's like dumping beer down his face. But I can tell you, man, that relief was there.
Yeah, instant.
Yeah, and it was a relief I always sought. So fast forward a year, my drinking got no better. I can tell you that. It got much, much worse. And I had a really rough night prior to on July 30th. I went out and I started with sake, went into a blackout, had brief glimpses of a date I was on, get slapped in the face, running over construction cones on the street. And out of the blue, at about 2 a.m, my dad was standing in my bedroom with the light on. Now, the thing that's significant about that is he was living down in Fort Myers, Florida. And I woke up and I'm like, well, what in the hell are you doing here? And he said, I had a premonition that I needed to come get you. And he had a premonition, which I think was tied directly to, because I had decided on the 30th that the next day that I was going to drive out to the Chain of Rocks Bridge and I was going to off myself because I just couldn't do another day of it. Does that make any sense? I just could not do another day of it.
Yeah.
So he scooped me up. We drove 23 and a half hours straight through to Fort Myers from St. Louis that night.
Wow.
That quick. And I completely walked away from my entire life. I didn't have anything but maybe a few clothes and a toothbrush. That's it. I left everything, the cars, the business, the money. I just ghosted out of St. Louis, just like that.
Wow. So what's going through your mind on day one of being out of there?
It was kind of a crazy mix of feeling crushed and feeling hope all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people can relate to that with here is the start of the rest of my life. But at the same time, you don't know what that looks like because your past life is all you know, and your experience is your reality. I know for myself, I couldn't imagine a life without drinking. I decided my life was just pretty much over, and my life is terrible as it is. So you take away the only good part of my life. Okay, so my life is just terrible for the rest of my life. And I remember my lawyer had said to me, and at the time I hated him for saying it, and I didn't believe it, but he said to me that the whole process of sobriety, he says, it's not the stopping of drinking, it's the starting of living. And I hated him for saying that because I knew he was looking me dead in the eye and lying. The guy had 40 years sober. And I knew for a fact he was lying because there's no way your life can even be mediocre without drinking. Nonetheless, incredible. But that was based on my experience. So you're back at day one in Fort Myers, and what's the first thing you do?
Well, my dad was able to get me into a free program through the David Lawrence Center, which is actually located in Immokalee, Florida, which is about 45 minutes south of Naples. And Karen got me in there. No money, no insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Back then, we did 30-day programs in-house. It was a tight program.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that it was probably the first time, not right away, but probably within the first week, it was the first time in my life that I felt like I fit somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a feeling growing up that even in a crowded room, you were alone and just you didn't quite fit in, and alcohol kind of bridged that gap for you?
Oh, absolutely. as I shared before we got started, I mean, I always felt like a square peg trying to be driven into a round hole, pretty much with everything that I was involved with. I just felt that way. And the crazy thing about alcohol for me is I could feel it start here, and I could physically feel it go to my arms, my hands, all the way down to my toes. And it was just like calm. There was like that period when I would drink of just calm. Now I would always overshoot it,
Yeah.
but there was that brief period of just absolute calm and harmony, you know, where it was like my brain slowed down. I could really see what was around me, you know, just this total awareness. And I just absolutely loved that. I could suddenly talk to the ladies. I was smooth with my words. I wasn't nervous. My stomach wasn't tied up. That was a big thing for me, is I always had a tied up stomach. Just every situation. I just felt like I was going to throw up. School, I hated school. I didn't hate school because of school. I hated school because I felt so weird around those other kids that knot in my stomach was just intense, you know.
So when you have that knot and it was solved from drinking, do you have that same issue now with the knot? If you're not drinking, what's your solution look like now? If you're still the same person, does that knot just not exist anymore? Or what does it look like now?
I wouldn't say it's totally non-existent, but I can say that through life's experiences, and good, bad, or indifferent, the one thing that a lot of people don't tell you about when you're getting sober, because when we first get sober, we're looking at everything through rose-colored glasses. That the heavens have waken up, golden roads of good intentions have been paved for us, and everybody should just be ecstatic and just joyous that we got sober. Well, that's not a realistic view of what sobriety is.
Yeah.
Not in any sense. I can say that today, I think through experience and a lot of work on myself, and then again, experience and tons of mistakes. That's another misconception about getting sober. You think, I'm going to be perfect from here on out. I'm not going to offend people. I'm not going to make mistakes. I'm no longer going to have resentments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's completely unrealistic. You know, I was on a total pink cloud, so to speak, probably for the first 6 months of being sober.
So everything was just absolutely perfect. Nothing can go wrong for 6 months.
It was wonderful. And everything was related to God, no matter what it was. The bus just splashed water on me. That was God. I look back now, it's almost kind of comical in the sense that not that God wasn't working in my life, but I think more of what was going on, it was the things that I was doing. Because right out of the gate, you had mentioned your sponsor. My sponsor was from New Jersey or the Bronx. His name was Cliff, had a New York accent. He was like talking to a mafioso guy. This guy had like a zero tolerance for any BS. He didn't want to hear my whining. He didn't want to hear my sniveling. You know what he wanted to hear? What are you doing?
The action.
And he gave me specific actions. You know, one of the funniest ones I remember, Cliff gave me two simple actions when I very first got sober to get started. He said, I want you to make your bed every day, and I want you to pray every morning and pray every night. Now, I don't care who you pray to or what you pray to or whatever, but make it as simple as give me help to get through this day. And then at the end of the night, say thanks. Okay? So, you know, a lot of us have angst to God or whatever we were raised with. I probably did. But I kept it that simple. But the thing that was crazy was I was in a dormitory with 20-something other guys where you could barely walk in there. There were so many beds. And these are guys that had done 15 years for murder. These are guys that had been living on the streets since the Vietnam era. And here I am praying in the middle of this dormitory after I made my bed. And I remember calling Cliff, and I called him after the first day, and I says, Cliff, I appreciate your advice on the actions I need to take, but I just don't think I can do this part. You don't understand. These guys are not happy about tripping over my feet. This is a hard bunch that's in here. And he would just say, shut up and do it, and he would hang up on me. That was the kind of guy he was. He knew with someone like me that he couldn't use soft mittens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he wasn't belittling me or, making me feel less. He was motivating me to make changes. And the only way I could make changes was through actions.
Mm-hmm. So your intentions didn't matter as much as the work that you were actually doing? Absolutely.
Thing is, and we hear a lot about it in JMT, is it's incremental, consistent actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the little things. The little things add to the big things. But you got to understand, when you're living in a halfway house, you have no money, you have no car, you have a job that's paying you $6.75 an hour. It's hard to have a lot of faith in that making my bed, eating breakfast, doing my chores, et cetera, are going to really make that big of a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
But those incremental actions start to build on other incremental actions. You see, and that's what it's really all about with self-awareness and personal growth, is it's little bitty actions.
How much time did you have sober before you started your first journey into entrepreneurship?
I spent about 2 years down in Naples, Florida, living, and I had made a conscious decision at that time to just work a job and focus on my recovery. At that point in my life, I had started a business when I was 18, 19 with my brother. I just didn't want to be caught up in that at that moment, if that makes sense.
So it's a lot of stress. So you just wanted to have the easy, I'm going to show up and get my paycheck in the end.
Exactly. And I'm not saying it was the right route to go, but it was just where I was at that point in my journey.
You didn't want to overwhelm yourself, because in the past, when you had all of those things on your plate, your solution to it was to drink. So kind of cutting out those factors until you can actually learn to live life without needing that to fall back on.
Exactly. So subsequently, after about 2 years, my mom made me an offer to come stay at her house. And she was able to get me into a vocational rehab, which would pay for me to go back to school and go back to college. And that's what I focused on probably till about 94, 95. And then I started doing painting, remodeling with a good friend of mine. And our business started to grow as a result of that.
What are some of the things you think helped that business grow? Was it just doing the same thing over and over, or was it something else that sort of led to the growth?
The great thing about what Cliff was teaching me in the beginning, which I didn't realize, was taking incremental, consistent actions. Okay. Now, I could sit at my house and think, I really want a good contracting business. I could read books morning, noon, and night about how to have a good contracting business. I could write about it. I could contemplate it. I could even call you up, Andrew, and say, I really want to have a good contracting business. But at the end of the day, that doesn't give you a contracting business, doesn't give you any customers.
Nope.
My sister calls it the lint effect. You know what the lint effect is?
No, what is that?
It's when she doesn't want to enter the world to do what she has to do for her business, she'll stand in front of a mirror with a lint brush for 15 or 20 minutes, getting all the lint off her jacket. So we call it the lint effect, and
just the procrastination and not doing anything.
I do not want to leave this house, And, interesting enough, me and you had a good conversation yesterday via Messenger. The upside of that is you motivated me to recognize the incremental actions I needed to take to get to that level that I wanted to get as far as the John Maxwell stuff goes.
Yeah, and a lot of it's not rocket science, but sometimes you just need someone to ask a question that forces you to use that part of your brain that you just weren't even thinking about using. And sometimes it's just you need someone to just flat out say, hey, here is your obstacle. It's not an obstacle. Go past it. And we can tell ourselves, no, it is because of this and that. And you don't understand my situation. And a lot of times I don't need to understand your situation. You don't understand reality is what's happening. This isn't my problem, you know? That's a lot of what I do with business coaching and financial coaching for families trying to get their lives back on track with their finances. It's a lot of just little incremental actions. And just a lot of times we haven't been given these instructions. We go through life, we go through school, you're forced to grow because your body's going to grow whether or not you want to. And once you reach that point in your life where you stop growing physically, it's about the same time where school is over as well. And you can choose whether or not you want to grow and continue. And so people will usually end up getting a job. You work for somebody else. They tell you what to do, how you're supposed to grow. And then we get into entrepreneurship and, you know, the whole reason, the paradox of it. Yeah, I want to work for myself. I don't want someone telling me what to do. And the paradox is you still have to do something. And now that you don't have somebody telling you what to do, and you can lose money if you don't do what you're supposed to do correctly, that's the other side of the coin. And you were talking about people want the effects. I want to have a great contracting company. Great. What are you willing to do to have one? What does someone who has a great contracting company look like? What does their day-to-day look like? What does their payroll look like? What do their contracts look like? They don't want that part. You know, my wife and I just had our firstborn son 2 weeks ago, and I've been to the office twice since that day. So today would be the 10th work day, 12th work day since he's been born. And people could look at me and say, well, Andrew, you only went to work twice this week. But they don't see in that metaphorical iceberg all the stuff that's beneath the surface that's going on to get to the point where, yes, in the last 12 days, I have physically shown up twice and put in full days of work, but you're not seeing the previous 4 years and the millions of dollars in payroll and training and mistakes that went into those 10 days of spending time with my family. So a lot of people, they want the prize, they want that freedom, but they're not willing to put in the years and the money that it takes. And it doesn't always have to be, you know, everyone's story doesn't have to be the same as mine. But most people, just with anything in life, you know, you hear people, wouldn't it be great if I won the lottery? And that's essentially saying, wouldn't it be great if I made a whole bunch of money doing nothing that caused me to deserve and actually earn it? That's when people are talking about winning the lottery. They're not talking about, wouldn't it be great if I just had the perfect job that I enjoy doing and showing up for and getting value? People want to win the lottery because you get all of that money without actually earning it.
Absolutely.
So you and your brother had been doing the painting company back in St. Louis. And so now you're starting up another thing. You're putting in the work into it. And what's the growth look like on that?
Well, it was slow at first, to be completely honest with you. And that's what people need to realize. I can remember putting hours and hours going to offices, going to insurance companies, meeting with people, going to chambers of commerce, and just networking. And what I realized, especially in the realm of my business, was personal relationships was a huge part of that. Much like your business. I couldn't just go sit in my house and just start generating hundreds of clients because, well, what's different from you than Joe Blow over here that does contracting himself, you know? And by getting in front of these people, getting in front of, you know, I did a lot of insurance work, and I was really good with getting tied into the insurance companies. The great thing about an insurance company is you only have to take care of one adjuster or one agent properly, and then it will spread like wildfire in that company. And everybody will be calling you because of that one person, because you took that good a care of their client and you made things happen. Again, it gets back to being concise and consistent. So if I tell them that I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there. That's a big thing for me even today, is I like to be consistent with being where I say I'm going to be, when I say I'm going to be there, as I say, doing the things the way I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it. I like to follow through and be consistent with that. And anybody that's friends with me know I'm extremely consistent. And when I tell people stuff, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I'm actually going to do it. I'm actually going to be there. I will actually help you. If I tell people today, what can I do to be helpful? And they say, it'd be great if you could pick the boys up and get them something to eat. Done. What time do I need to pick them up? 4:30. I'll be there at 4:20. And I'm there at 4:20. I pick the boys up. I take them out to eat, whatever, but it's being consistent. And we've heard it in JMT, people buy people. They don't buy the products.
Yeah.
I mean, how true is that?
And that's sales in general.
Everybody on here, think for a minute of your last purchase from like a salesperson. Well, why did you make that purchase? Was it because our product was that great? I can tell you for my last big one has been our reward system for our store. And it wasn't because I thought they were any more significant than any of the other rewards program, because there's a million of them out there. But it was a sales girl. She was so good at her presentation and so smooth and concise with what she was relaying to me. That's why I bought the program that I did. And you know how she was good like that? Because she, and I can tell you right now, spent a lot of time practicing. She practiced, she learned that material, she learned that program inside and out, frontwards and backwards, sideways. She already knew responses to objections I had before they even came out. And that's why I went with that program, even though it was probably 20 to 30% more expensive than the other programs I was looking at.
The personality behind the product, though, that was really what you were purchasing. So you were touching on consistency, though. Before you were sober, what did your consistency look like? Has it been a mantra of your whole life, or is that something that recovery has pushed you more towards?
I think that recovery has definitely pushed me in that direction. Whether it's recovery, JMT, church, whatever self-improvement organization you're a part of, if you break them all down, if you open them all up, they're all based on simple, consistent actions. All of them. Like you said, this isn't rocket science. It's simple stuff. The law of percentages. If you do something enough times, eventually you're going to succeed. I think of the guy that invented the light bulb, Thomas Edison. What was it, like almost 1,000 tries the guy did or something?
Yeah, I think it was even more.
It might have even been more, but I mean, talk about resolve. But just sit and imagine right now if that guy would have quit at, let's say, 999.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have light bulbs right now. We'd have something different, something else.
Yeah, hopefully we'd have something by now. But yeah, exactly. So that resolve to be able to keep doing it, whether or not you want to, but just I know that I need to do this. And like you said, the law of percentages, if I do this enough times, I will find something that is working and does work as long as I trust the process. So Cliff was giving you instructions to be consistent back when you first got sober, and you were following those, and you didn't see immediate results from it. But
absolutely not.
Did the consistency of continuing to do that, you started to eventually see the results because you were consistent?
Absolutely. And what's crazy is you remember those moments early in sobriety where like you're sitting somewhere or what have you, and it's like everything just kind of comes in complete clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had one at about 6 months. I was sitting on a beautiful beach at the Naples Pier, looking out at the ocean, and it was like everything made sense. Like everything Cliff had been telling me. I mean, I was consistent to the point of almost having a written schedule of minute by minute of each day. Because for me, I had to do that consistency and continuously take action. Because when I didn't continuously take action, I would fall back into that lull, which would lead probably back into drinking. And see, I knew that. I knew that if I didn't keep going forward, that I was going to fall back into what I came from. And I absolutely, no matter what unreasonable ideas he proposed, I was willing to do them just because I didn't want to feel that way anymore.
So how does that tie into your business?
Well, getting back to back then, I think a lot of the misunderstanding of life, so to speak, and I think schools are kind of guilty of driving this into us, that once you get this bachelor's degree, this whole opportunity is going to open up for you. Okay. I bought into that for a while. Okay. I bought into it. And let me tell you, when I got done with college, crickets. There wasn't one damn person that pulled up and offered me anything.
Yeah.
I mean, goose egg. I thought, well, okay, well, I'll go get my resume done. Surely all these accomplishments will impress somebody. Well, I can assure you that 99% of them probably lined somebody's trash can or bird cage. They didn't even get read. Okay. Rewinding a little bit, when me and my brother, you know why we started that painting company?
What was the reason behind starting it?
So to put into perspective, this was the late 80s. Interest rates for new homes back then, or any home, was about 22%.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, had just gotten out of the Naval Reserves. I was in the Seabees, and I learned construction. That's what I learned in the Navy, how to build things. So my goal when I get back was to be a union apprentice in the Carpenters Union. I mean, I did the resume, proudly put all my schooling, all the naval accomplishments, went in there, and you know what they told me? We're not hiring apprentices. We can't keep the apprentices we have now working because there's nothing going on. All right? I mean, it was like someone just popped my balloon. So I'm sitting in the front room with my brother. We're both broke as a joke. I think we had a couple $100 left to our name. Well, you got to survive. Neither one of us had a job or could get a job. So we came up with a brilliant idea to run a painting ad in a local journal. $25.99. We'll paint any room. Phone starts ringing. Okay. Never forget my very first customer, because guess what? I knew zero about painting. I never painted a room. Okay.
So you didn't even have a background in this company. You were just like, I'm starting a painting company. Let's do it.
It was called PM3. That's what we called it. And I said, well, hell, I got to look like a painter. So I went out and bought painter whites, white T-shirt, went by Sherwin-Williams, got the little hat, got a couple brushes. I put a brush in my little side pocket. I'm like, well, what the hell do you do to cover everything? I guess we get some tarps. Well, my brother said the canvas tarps were too expensive, so we got those big blue tarps. Well, let me tell you, trying to tarp off a house with those is like a monkey screwing a football. It's a mess, okay? But I'll never forget, this first old couple that took the chance with us and hired us to paint their house. So graceful, so sweet, because guess what? They knew I didn't have a freaking clue about what I was doing with painting. I mean, not a clue. And it took me 2.5 weeks to paint their house. I spent probably about $400 in materials, another $500 or $600 in equipment and so forth. And I think I charged them $370. I mean, I lost my ass on all levels.
But you learned something really important from that, didn't you?
I learned quick. I learned really quick. And I'll tell you, that was trial by fire. And I jumped in there, and within the first 3 days, I realized I need canvas tarps because the plastic tarps don't work. Okay, so I went out and got canvas tarps. You see what I'm saying? And then I was like, how do you cut in? This brush isn't very good. Well, I went to the paint store. They said, well, if you want to cut in, you got to buck up and spend $20 for that brush because that's the brush you use to cut in because that's a high quality brush. Guess what? He was right. So I went and bought that $20 brush. You see what I'm saying? So it was It was a learning in action.
Yeah. And a lot of times when people are starting their business, I know myself, I was guilty of this, and I never would have imagined that my IT company would have grown to what it has. So with that caveat, when I started my company in my living room by myself, I always tried to find the cheapest solution possible, not the best one, not the most scalable one, the least expensive one. And I remember the payment gateway online, I don't even think they exist anymore. It's called Quantum Gateway. And it was $5 per month less than authorized.net, which is, the gold standard of online processing. And I was like, well, what difference does it make? I'm saving $5. That's $60 a year. Hey, that's an extra $60 a year in my pocket. But all of the extra garbage I had to go through because that didn't work with any of the other software and things that I was using. I had to do so much extra data entry. I had to pay developers to make things work for this custom thing nobody else had ever heard of. And for $5 extra a month, I would have saved so much time, so much energy. It would have been more professional to begin with, but I was so focused on saving $5 instead of saving my time and energy. And it ultimately ended up that I would have saved the money too if I had just done that up front. So like your experience, if you had just gotten the canvas tarps to begin with, like you probably knew you should have.
And a good brush.
You would have, yeah, and the brush. You wouldn't have spent the money on the ones that you didn't need to use.
Exactly. And that's so true with everything that you do. And, there's people probably on here listening think, well, that's great for you too. You guys, this doesn't pertain to me. Let's just say I'm staying in mom's basement finishing up my master's degree, which I have no problem with. But the thing is, these actions pertain to anybody. It doesn't matter where you're at in life. There is no level. It's not like me and Andrew were plucked out of this level and plucked into this level. It was through a series of incremental, consistent actions.
Yeah. And the thing is too, once you start doing those actions, your baseline, my baseline when I started my company, it was here. And then I started doing those actions over and over and over. And my baseline started rising with it. And funny enough, the revenue was increasing with it as well. And then once I learned how to actually run a business and not just me, myself doing it, but hiring employees and learning how to scale, have operations in place. Once I started learning all of that, it's not necessarily that I was at a different higher level, but I was playing a different game. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that it's neither here nor there as far as what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, because we all just have 24 hours. And what you do with that time, it is completely up to you. And most people have gone their whole lives with, well, I go to this job from 9 to 5. I get paid my salary or my hourly wage, and that's what work is. And when you get into entrepreneurship, you're playing just a completely different game. If you go working for somebody else and you do a bad job at work, well, if you're getting paid hourly, maybe you won't keep that job for long, but you still get paid the same. You go to your job as an entrepreneur and you screw up, guess what? You just lost $400 doing that job for somebody else. With the risks come the rewards if you do it right, but most people don't have that perspective. So you did your first painting job. You learned that having the right tools plays a huge role, even if it does cost a little extra money. Did that help you in your next job? You didn't make that same mistake again, did you?
No, but kind of a real quick funny story that kind of plays into this. So I had a customer that she had about a 60-year-old house back in the north side. They all painted their porches. She had a painted concrete porch. She wanted it stripped and repainted. No problem. I got this. I never stripped a porch before in my life. I had no idea what you even get to strip a porch. I went down to the paint store, went down to Sherwin-Williams. I said, well, what the hell do I use to strip this porch. He says, you need this stuff called Bix stripper. He says, you coat it on there, you let it sit, it curls the paint up, then you power wash it off, let it dry 24 hours, come back, paint it. Great. Okay. So I bought 10 gallons of this stuff because it was a big porch. And I coated it. And when I mean I coated it, it had probably almost an inch of stripper all over this entire porch. Meanwhile, she's in the front room, big front window, watching Oprah with her back to the porch. Okay. I decide I'm going to let this stuff sit. I'm going to stand over here and I'm going to light a cigarette. Well, I didn't know anything about fumes. The whole porch went up in flames. And I had 18-foot flames up the front of this woman's house. While she's watching Oprah with the curtains open, the whole front of her house is on fire. Okay. Luckily, it burned out real fast. It was like a flash fire. And she never knew. Now the whole front of her house was black. She's just watching TV. So I get my power washer over there real quick. By the way, I didn't have one, so I had to go out and buy one. Went and bought a power washer, and I cleaned the whole front of her house while the porch. Okay.
So did she never know that you set her house on fire?
She never knew. She never knew. But, the funniest part of it is a couple weeks later, I went by to check on everything, and she had 4 30-foot, 40-foot spruce pines on the corner of her house. All of them were dead because of the fire.
Did she make the connection?
No, she never knew. I mean, she was literally, it looked like a picture out of hell. She's sitting with her back to the window, and I mean, the flames were going up the front of her house. The whole damn front was on fire.
So what was the lesson learned?
Lesson learned is probably read the instructions.
Read the instructions.
Read the instructions.
Sometimes you don't have to always learn the hard way, but that experience, though, how many times after that did you set a house on fire?
Never.
Never
happened again. And I'll tell you, I was probably the most careful person when it came to stripper, because I was standing 10 feet away when I lit a cigarette up and that porch went up. That's how fumes work. And I wish I would have caught it on video, because people just don't even believe me when I tell them how high those flames were. But
that's incredible.
It is like that with anything. The thing is, as you know, I'm relatively new in the John Maxwell training, and there is a lot. And I'm sure, like so many people that have spent their $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to sign up for the program, whatever it is, it's a lot of money, think that, man, I have signed up for JMT and I am going to be making bank in 2 months. They hold all the golden keys of the kingdom. They do in many respects, but guess what it is? It's a lot of incremental actions and a whole bunch of work. And then
absolutely
through time and consistency with the tools that they provide and the directions, like we're talking about the big stripper, then you can reach those points. They don't give you a timeline.
That's a good point. It also ties back into this idea that we're sold with the school system of go to school, and then once you graduate, people are going to be knocking down your door. And that's not nobody, but very few people have that as their actual experience. And I know one of my best friends from college, I was having a conversation with him the other day, and he was telling me, he was like, probably the worst decision I've ever made in my life was going to college, because he got out of college. He's making 60 grand a year at a sales job. It's nothing really to scoff at, but he's paying back all these student loans, and he started life 5 years after he graduated high school. 5 years later, he's starting at a sales job. And so he's negative with a degree doing a job he didn't need one for anyway. But we're all sold on this. You go to school and all this knowledge is going to make you actually get somewhere. And a lot of people, I think, go into the John Maxwell program. And I mean, they preach it left and right. Your consistency compounds. Your action is what's going to cause this to work. Success is always uphill. There's nothing worthwhile downhill. So a lot of people just kind of buy this idea, well, I'm going to buy all this knowledge, get it in my brain. And then once I have this knowledge, now I'm going to be a successful entrepreneur. Or if I've got the John Maxwell logo on my website, all of a sudden people are going to want me. Like, people in the John Maxwell program are the ones that respect it and understand it and know all the things that are going on. But I've spoken to my friends who are public speakers after I went to my first convention. And I was like, yeah, I got certified as a coach, blah, blah. I'm really excited. And they're like, what's that? And I was like, what do you mean, what's that? You're a professional speaker and you don't know about the John Maxwell certification? They're like, no, what's that? And I was just like, I had owned my business for 4 years at this point. So I understood that having a designation or accreditation from the Better Business Bureau or being ranked #1 on Yelp, like all of these accolades that people kind of hang their hat on, none of them really in the big sense matter, because I'll be honest, I'd rather have a company that's doing well by the customer in making money than one that has all of these awards and this and that. Like, if I'm doing a good service, have a good product, my customers are happy and I'm profitable, that's bottom line for me. If I can provide for my family because I've gotten clarity on where my priorities are, what actually matters to me. And once I've broken that down and realized what I want is a company that does well by the customers, has a good product, I don't have to be racing to have the lowest price. You can find lower prices than my company anywhere. I will tell you right now, if you go to Fiverr.com, you can find people that do the same thing that we do for pennies, for dollars. However, one of the great lines that I had heard from one of my first employees, he says, good service isn't cheap. Cheap service isn't good. And we've hung our hat on that and been very successful for the last 5 years. And yes, if you look at it as just a commodity, absolutely, we are not the cheapest ones. I don't try to be the cheapest one. I pride myself on going the extra level. And we haven't even touched on Stella Blues Vapors. So why don't you give the listeners a little background on that? And I know that in your world, it is a race to the bottom as far as prices for a lot of people, but not you. So why don't you give them a background on Stella Blues Vapors and kind of discuss your take on the pricing and quality and the customer experience?
Well, Andrew, you touched on it 100%. One of the biggest lost art forms in all my years of owning businesses and being in business has been the loss of customer service. 100%. Overall, most companies just do not care about customer service, and they don't see the return of value for premium customer service. Just to put it in perspective, our shop is located in downtown Fenton. I have 4, maybe 5 vape shops within 3 square miles of our shop. That's a lot of shops all competing for the same customers. I have one that's a half mile up the street that will do everything in the book to cut their prices on every level just to cut the throat of their competition. And I remember when they came in 2 years ago, everybody's worried, oh my God, they're going to put you out of business. That's what they do. They come in, they cut their prices, they offer stuff where you can't even compete, this and that. And I told everybody here at our shop, I said, just relax, because A, we have a premium product, and B, we have premium customer service, and that will carry us through. And I will say initially we lost some people. Numbers dropped a little bit when they opened, dips here and there. But what I can tell you today, 2 years later, they're the ones sitting with an empty shop, okay? We have over 1,000 reward members signed up currently today. My shop's only 500 square feet. We're not talking some big storefront. It's a little bitty shop. But that's 1,000 people that come to my store 2 to 3 times a month. And that's compounding money there.
Yeah.
That's consistency as far as revenue coming in here. And people come in and they say, your equipment's cheaper than every shop in St. Louis. Why is that? Why is your equipment $40 cheaper than the guy right up here at the street? And I said, because I'm not interested in selling you equipment. You know what I'm interested in? You trying my juice. Because guess what? I know once you try my juice, I've got you as a customer for life. And that's who those 1,000 people every month consist of. Because nobody in St. Louis, probably the Midwest, has his juice as good as ours.
So the quality plays a big role in it. And you recognize that your customers, they're not just looking for the cheapest juice that they can get. They're looking for an all-around experience, and you're providing that at your expense, though, because to be able to provide that, you're not paying the absolute lowest. Is that correct?
Well, what's unique about our shop is I've created all 112 juices. The only juices we carry is my juices, which there is no other shop probably around in the entire country that does that. Every shop that you walk into has at least 10 to 20 different lines in their store. They have huge walls filled with all these little bottles. That's the first thing. The second thing is we don't bottle your juice till you walk in the door. And you say, well, what's the significance of that? The way e-liquid works is it steeps like wine. The longer that it steeps, and what I mean by steeping, that is without nicotine. So you have made the juice, let's say pineapple punch. It sits in that jug. The longer it sits, it's like wine. It gets better with time. That sets us apart from everybody, because the thing is, as soon as you introduce nicotine into the e-liquid, it starts to break that juice down. It starts to alter the flavor. Within about 3 to 4 weeks, that e-liquid would start taking on a stale taste. So that's where we've got all the competition. Not only are our flavors premium, but there's nothing fresher in St. Louis. You cannot get a fresher e-liquid than what we do here. Nowhere even within 1,000 miles of here. And I know this for a fact because I have people that drive 2-4 hours away just to buy our juice. Once a month, they drive up here, they drop $200 on juice, they drive home every month.
Wow.
They come in, they get our juice, and they drive home. They drive past probably 30 vape shops.
Yeah, at least
30 vape shops. I mean, that's ridiculous. So think about that. We don't carry anybody's lines but our own. That's it.
And one of the things that I've come to learn in running my business is that the less points of failure that are dependent on somebody else and somebody else's terms, the more control you have. And as long as you've got control over those aspects, it's going to work wonders for your company, because I've seen so many places that they have this incredible sales force and they're making all of this money, and then their back end, they can't scale it themselves. They subcontract it out to someone in India or something like that. Everything falls apart. And then the company that they're working with in India triples their prices. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with all these politics. That actually happened with us with one of the big name antivirus companies that we used to be a reseller for. Overnight, they tripled our prices.
Wow.
Just not even an email. Just one day, they would bill us monthly per active customers. Sure. And we have like a dashboard, and we can see all of our customers, the health of their computer. So as part of the service that we offered is you have monitoring on your computer. So we can reach out to you, let you know if there's an issue with your computer. Great dashboard, great product. And then my bill, it was usually, I don't know, we'll say like $4,000 a month. And then one month it was $12,000. And I looked on their website, their prices had changed. They didn't have a toll-free number. And 1 week later, we changed companies.
Wow.
We were fortunate enough to be in a situation where it was a commodity, and there's enough big players in the antivirus world that it's not like we had the only one that offered this specific thing. So it wasn't a huge pain, but suppose there weren't. We are at their mercy for pricing and everything. And just overnight, without warning, tripled our prices. And you found a way to circumvent that. You control the costs. I mean, other than the ingredients cost, but you're controlling the manufacturing, the production. You have a quality control over everything. Suppose the juices that your competitors are buying, suppose they just say one day, we're just going to use terrible quality, keep charging the same so we can increase our margins. No one's going to notice up front. They'll have the preconceived notion in their head. Maybe this was a bad batch, da 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 da. And then the customers buy it from those stores, and the customer comes back to the store and says, you sold me this garbage, and the store had nothing to do with it, but they were at the mercy of somebody else. And so would you agree that finding ways to circumvent the dependence on someone else really helps you set the tone for the quality and the standards of your business?
100%, and getting back to even relating to your business, I call it the Starbucks effect. We can go get a cup of coffee anywhere. You can go to McDonald's and get a decent cup of coffee for 99 cents. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. So why would you go spend $3.50 at Starbucks to get a caramel macchiato with a little touch of whipped cream on top?
You could spend $3 and get black coffee is what I get.
But
yeah, exactly.
But what is it? Is it just the coffee?
It's the experience, right?
Right. I mean, you go in there. I mean, generally everybody's on point. It's professional. 99% of the time, they make you feel welcome, like you're the most important person that just walked into Starbucks. Consistency-wise, I know what I'm getting every time I go in there, as do my customers, as do your customers. They know every time they walk through my door, 99.9% of the time, they're going to get consistency and quality like they've come to learn, depend, and rely upon. And getting back to what you said as far as the race to the bottom, the big trend in our industry the last 2 years is people been dropping their e-liquid prices to just ridiculous amounts. I mean, it's really been a race to the bottom, which you've probably even witnessed in your sector as far as technology goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the problem is, as you know, as we talked about, when you sacrifice something somewhere, you're going to sacrifice it somewhere else. And the thing is, I know what ingredients cost. They're the most expensive component of making e-liquids, is the ingredients, not the sweeteners. The sweeteners are percentage of a penny on a dollar. I mean, it's like almost nothing. But what companies have done now is they've cut back all their ingredients and they've loaded their e-liquids with sweeteners. Great. So a guy can go up the street, get the same size bottle that he can here for half the cost. Two problems with that. First, it goes blank after 2 days. The flavor it's like it just disappears. Second, it burns through a $5 coil. Coils normally last anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. So now they're up to $20. Plus they're stuck with 3/4 of a bottle that doesn't taste like anything, and they got to go buy a new coil. So they're going to go buy another bottle of juice and a new coil. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the end of the day, they're pissed off because they didn't enjoy their vaping experience. My customers don't have that problem. They come in here, they get their favorite juice or they try a new juice. They know that even if they jump from pineapple punch to raspberry limeade, guess what? It's going to be high quality, consistent, and it's not going to go blank, and it's not going to burn your coils.
That's incredible. So basically, And it's also people, you know, if they're just looking the short term, okay, I got the e-liquid for a whole lot cheaper at this other store. There's the costs that are also associated with it too, that they're not factoring in. And of course, you know, the competitor is not going to say, by the way, you're going to have to buy new coils at an alarmingly high rate as a result of saving the money here.
You might want 2 5-packs instead of 1 5-pack, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of your thoughts on, I mean, the whole vaping scene is relatively new, and people, there's a lot of health concerns about it too. And I know that there haven't been anything that's been super documented, but what are some of the objections that you hear, and what is your take on the whole health aspect of it?
Well, first off, in 2015, the Royal College of Physicians did an extensive study on vaping, okay? Through years of testing, I think it was 2 or 3 years of their extensive testing, they found vaping to be a minimum of 95% safer than cigarettes. That's documented. Anybody can look this up on here, anywhere. What's happened in the U.S., just quickly and kind of in a nutshell, vaping is bad for business. It's bad for local and federal taxes. It's bad for big pharma, because guess what? You quit smoking, you get healthy. You get healthy, you don't need big pharma.
Wow.
And people say, well, that's kind of a conspiracy thought, right? Look at the American Heart Association, the American Lung Association, all those well-respected organizations, okay? You can look up their financials. You can, right now. You can go look up their financials, because they have to post their financials. Guess where most of their contributions come from? Big pharma.
Wow.
And guess what? We're talking billions of dollars at stake, because vaping has taken that big of a chunk out of taxes, out of big pharma, out of big tobacco. So all of them create, because they've got billions of dollars at stake, create false narratives like popcorn lung. I'm going to get popcorn lung if I vape. I've heard that 300 times in my store from new people. Well, what about popcorn lung? Popcorn lung was never from vaping. Popcorn lung came from a guy working in a popcorn factory for 25 years. And he was inhaling dialectol, which is one of the ingredients that used to be in some e-liquids like 4 years ago. It's no longer present, but it was present like 4 years ago. Big Pharma spun that into vaping's going to give you popcorn lung, put millions of dollars behind that story, blew it out on social media, news stations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the narrative we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
And just to add with our business, we are not allowed to advertise on Google. I'm not allowed to advertise on Facebook. I'm not allowed to advertise on Twitter. I'm not allowed to advertise on YouTube. It all violates all their use rules. So we basically have no advertising. This business here, as we sit here today, been built 100% on referrals. 100%.
That's incredible.
I have entire families that come in here. Swear to God, it's like family day. Mom, dad, daughter, husband of the daughter, his brother. I mean, I've had up to 12 family members in here at one time buying vaping stuff.
Wow.
And they don't go anywhere else. You ask any of my customers, well, how did you hear about us? Well, Bob here at work was vaping on this pineapple punch. Let me try it. I said, Jesus, that's good juice. Where'd you get that? Stella Blues. And that, my friend, is the point of good customer service, consistency, and great products, which all ties back into the very beginning with my sponsor, Cliff. Incremental consistencies.
So what did the first couple months of Stella Blues look like versus what it looks like now? Because obviously when you don't have customers and the word of mouth to help you build your base, how did you first get started? Was it just walk-ins, or what were you doing to actively grow your business?
I can say it was bleak, to say the least. Just to put it into perspective, I spent 3 months restoring this building, myself and some other people. We spent 6 months fighting with the city of Fenton because they did not want to give us a business license to open a vape shop down here. So I went to 3 or 4 hearings just to get licensing. I spent a total of around $55,000 of my money on improvements, cases, products, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I can tell you that I got a lot of heat from my wife for the first 6 months, because guess how much I made my first day?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was not $55,000.
$50.
You know what though? Most places don't make money, period. But yeah. One thousandth of what you need just to be zero. It's basically like college.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and what's great is that lady still comes in here to this day. That very first lady, because she got treated like the president of the United States when she walked.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had a red rug rollout. I mean, she had like 3 associates. I mean, getting her a bottle of water. I mean, she could not have had a better retail experience, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
But what we decided in the very beginning is we wanted to treat everyone like that walked through that door, whether they spent $2 or $200. It makes no difference. We want everybody to feel that validated when they walk through that door.
That's great.
And when we're behind the bar, because I'll send you a picture, Andrew, but it's a classic bar with the bottles up, and it looks old school. And we have a very kind of homey feeling in here. That's what a lot of people say. It's clean, it's nice, but it's just a very welcoming environment. And that was our whole point. We want everybody to feel welcome and warm and leave with something positive every time they come here.
Yeah. And in doing my homework, before the interview, I'm looking up your reviews on social media, and your customers love you. I mean, for my own, we have altogether, we've worked on about 12,000 customers over the last 5 years. And our Google page, we hadn't made a huge push for social media until like the last year, but we have a 4.9 rating. Pretty much the only bad reviews are actually from competitors. Neither here nor there. A 4.9, I don't think anyone's going to say that's bad. And I think we have 97 reviews. But have you looked at your Google My Business recently? Do you know what yours is?
It's, I think, 4.8, 4.9. It's somewhere around there. This is another key thing with every one of those reviews. I respond to every review, good or bad.
Same.
Good or bad. And I notice a lot of companies, when I look up their reviews, they don't ever respond.
It's not difficult.
They don't say thank you. Hey, we value you as a customer. Please come back. Next time you come in, I'll just say you posted here and I'll give you 10% off. I mean, that goes a million miles with people.
It's so easy to do. And you get an email too, or at least mine's set up that way. I get an email. It says, John left a review for Rush Tech Support. You get a push notification on your phone. It takes 1 minute to respond. And just so you know, because I'm also in the SEO space, don't reply with a coupon code, because Google, it actually violates their terms.
Oh,
you can do it in private, thanking them, but you can't advertise. If you give us a review, we'll do it.
Oh, yeah.
So just a heads up, they could possibly misinterpret it. Obviously, that's not your intention, but I've seen it happen to other people. But either way, responding to people and even saying thank you goes so much further than just oh yeah, you gave me a good review. Of course I did a good job. Like, it's finishing up. It's finishing up the experience with just that cherry on top. And we recently, like I said, my wife, we just had our firstborn son, and sent out an email, and it said, Rush Tech has a new baby. And the open rate on it was probably better than 90% of the marketing material we send out. But the response, though, from the customers was, congratulations, thank you so much. And it takes 5 seconds to respond. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Happy you're a customer. And they make it accessible too. It's not like you have to be this tech nerd in order to hit reply. It's an option. you have to go out of your way almost to not do it.
Well, and what's great is this ties right into, in my opinion, personal growth, which part of personal growth is adding value to others. And I think this is often overlooked by entrepreneurs and people in business is, yeah, there's value in this and this and that. I'm talking about on a personal level. Is there any value you can add to customers on a personal level? When someone walks in here, a lot of times you can tell when someone's having a good day and they're having a bad day. And I always use the same question. How's your Friday going? And guess what? 99% of the time, people are going to reveal if they're having a bad day. Why? Because we want to share our bad day. We're pissed off. But how great is that is in a span of 10 minutes if you can get them laughing and leave on a positive note. And it didn't cost you a dime. It's just you took time to listen, maybe like you said, ask some questions, and add something to their day, which could have totally spun their whole day in a different direction. I think of a quick story of a lady that was trying to pay for her juice and her card wasn't going through, and she was getting full of anxiety and just falling apart right there at the register. I put my hand on her hand, I handed her a card, and I said, this one's on me. You don't have anything to worry about. And the lady completely lost it. And she said that was the kindest thing anyone's done for her all week. She's had that bad of a week. That one simple, insignificant, little adding value. Totally.
And did she come back?
Absolutely. She's still a customer today.
It's so funny because so many people are so short-sighted on the transaction and not the relationship. And I'll tell you, we have some customers, they were spending $15 up front. 15. And the lifetime value on them is over thousands now, like over 5,000. And it wasn't the upfront, how much can I possibly get right now? But if they just understand what the experience is like, they'll be willing to pay a premium, because it's no secret in either of our businesses, you can get it for cheaper.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it's really, it encompasses society as a whole, in my opinion. People are so self-absorbed to so many levels. I'm not talking about everybody, but a good majority. I'm even self-absorbed sometimes. But I'm just saying that if people would honestly just kind of wake up, look around in their immediate circle, whether it's at work, school, whatever, and think, who around me could I add some value to their life? And I don't mean go hand them a check for 10 grand. Maybe it's just go get them a cup of coffee the next time you go by McDonald's or Starbucks. Maybe it's just sending them a note via email. Hey man, I hope you're having a great day and you have an awesome weekend. We tend to think that has no relevance. I think of one of my suppliers. Do you know that every time, as soon as I order from them, doesn't matter what I spent, they send me a thank you text. Seems silly, but I'll tell you what, they always stick out in my mind when I go to order stuff, because literally every time I order, I get an automatic, we just want to let you know how much we appreciate your business and thank you. So simple.
Little things, they go such a long way. So it's been your experience then that the customer support, the customer experience, keeping them coming back and investing in your people as well as your customers, even if the margins are a little smaller, it's definitely worth it to build a business.
Absolutely. I'm sure you have even done this in your business. In fact, I know you have. But you've eaten some cost with clients. You know why? Because you see the long game, okay? Now, you could have stuck the hatchet in his back. Let's just say your hard cost was $5,000. Let's just say your hard cost was $5,000, okay?
Yeah.
Your markup to him would be $7,000 or $8,000. I mean, his system was a mess. You paid your top guys, they worked 14 hours a day for a whole week to fix the system. And you charged them $3,500. And your business manager or office manager or what have you is like, Andrew, that's insane. Dude, we're taking a $4,500 loss on this. And that's before we even get into profit, and gives you a whole list of this and that. And you go, yeah, but guess what? We're going to retain them for another 2 to 5 years. We'll make it up.
Yeah.
We're going to make that money up. And I don't mean in a taken advantage of type of thing, because I never look at that with my own customers. But I've eaten stuff here. I've taken equipment back and switched it out for people that it was obvious that they're the ones that screwed it up. I've eaten $50, $60 pieces of hardware. You know why? Because I'm going to get it back in the long game. And many of those people, 4 years later, off that one mod, still come in here every week, spend $30, $40, or $50 every week like clockwork.
Yeah.
Guess what? I've long made that money up for that mod.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that, the above and beyond, because I haven't been the one that's been fixing computers at Rush for a long time. And one of the ladies emailed me on the email about my son, and she said, Andrew, I don't know if you remember me or not, but 5 years ago, you worked on my computer until 7 a.m. And I want you to know that one experience is why I'm still with you guys today. And I remembered it, and it was like, yeah, that was a nightmare of a case. But going above and beyond, even if in the short term, I could have just as easily said, not my job, I'm off, and dealt with it the next day. And she may have stayed a customer. I doubt it would have turned into a refund or anything on that transaction. But seeing the value in your customers as not just a transaction, but a relationship. I think that's the big thing that we're pulling out from here, is that these relationships, it's not just how much can I get this one time, but understanding the lifetime value of a customer. So just moving forward a little bit. So you said you've been in the John Maxwell team now for a few months.
Sure.
What is your motivation to join the John Maxwell team? Because you seem to have everything under control. Why add that extra element to your life, especially knowing that it's not just, well, I get this John Maxwell certification and now I start making more money. Like, there's a ton of work behind it. What's your motivation for taking your life and taking that next step when you already own, or pretty much own, the business that you're already working in?
Well, this is called the law of the rubber band, okay? And this is what my life looked like prior to JMT. The thing with the law of the rubber band is where we're happiest and most content is when we're being stretched. And so I no longer wanted to go around in life like this. And where I'm at today is I'm starting to be stretched. Not because I had to be, it's because I want to be. Someone approached me about personal growth similar to John Maxwell 18 years ago. I reached out to him last week. I said, I wanted to thank you, Brett, for all your efforts. All those times you tried to get me to go to masterminds, to read your damn books, to go to your damn seminars. The guy was golden. I mean, he wasn't trying to get anything from me. He was, honest to God, just trying to relate personal growth to me. And it took me this long for it to finally click up here. That's the secret. That's the secret to everything, is personal growth.
Absolutely.
There is no other secret. Yeah, you can go for a weekend and listen to some razzle-dazzle, kick-ass speaker. Man, you come out of there and you're just like high-fiving, and everybody's just in the car like the Queen song and the Wayne's World, and, just floating on life. Come Monday, everybody's like, because motivation has no lifespan unless you follow it up with something.
Yeah.
And that's what JMT for me is. JMT told me straight up, day one, this is lifelong, brother. This isn't a 2-week 2-month course and then you're on your way. Oh, no. Trust me, we put so much content into our website, you'll never get it. You'll never be on top of everything. And they are right. I mean, it is like drinking from a fire hydrant. I mean, you just cannot take it in fast enough.
And the daily mentorship, as well as all of the content and mentorship. And I was actually talking to someone the other day. I don't recall how the conversation started, but essentially they had said, oh, I don't like the whole John Maxwell thing because they're just always trying to sell you on something. They're trying to sell you on something. And I mean, to an extent, you know, if you went to your job, say John, just in the books that he's written a million of them. If you went to your job for hours every day and never got paid, would you keep doing it?
No.
Of course not. So the fact that he's providing value to other people's lives, and I mean, you know, I'm not here to like fight this battle for him, but when the person said that, he's like, they always want me to join mentorship because they're playing it off like that's the secret. I'll be honest, when I first joined it, the company was doing extremely well, and it was okay. This is a drop in the bucket, whatever. I know I'm supposed to do it, so I'll do it, and maybe I'll get something out of it. And I wasn't applying it. You know, I had the bookmark, and I know there's a ton of content, ton of resources. And recently, though, I became intentional about it. And I said, every Thursday during lunch, we're going to be doing a mastermind on the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. Anybody that wants to attend can attend. And that's the secret. I don't want it to be mandatory. And I'll tell you what, in the last couple months, we had to let one of our managers go. And I'm not saying this was the reason, but all of my managers attended except for one. One of them no longer works for me. And I mean, there's a lot of outside forces that played into it. I'm not saying it was a, haha, this is your punishment for not wanting to grow, because I only want people there that are interested in actually growing. And those are the ones that participate. And like when I joined your mastermind, I wanted to grow. I wanted to learn more. I also didn't want to look like a fool in front of my employees because I knew the 21 laws of leadership backward and forward, and I've been through it multiple times. And then we finished it, and I was consistent every single Thursday. The only Thursdays I missed were when I was not in the city or when my son was born, were the only times that I missed the 21 laws of leadership. And we just started the mastermind. I put it online for people to watch when we're doing the invaluable laws of growth. And it's just so interesting to see the shift in people, because there are some people that they sit there and, okay, nod their head. This is great. This is great. I'll keep living my life. I heard some cool stuff from Andrew, but some people take it and run with it. My executive assistant, for instance, she is night and day from where she was 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
But how cool is that?
It's great. And I mean, you know, selfishly, she's more effective at her job. That's always a wonderful silver lining, but just in personal growth, because a lot of times she was very, very afraid of confrontation. And she knows now I am forcing her to have the confrontations that she doesn't want to have. And it's really, really cool because she is now passing that on to other people. One of the people that does SEO work with us, he picks up a check every Friday. He needed some special situation, this or that. And he was talking to her about it. And she was like, well, you need to talk to Andrew about it. He's like, oh, well, can't I just do it through you? And she's like, Andrew wouldn't let me not have this awkward conversation. And now I'm going to force you to grow. And so it's really, really rewarding though. And not, oh, I love to watch him squirm, but facing that fear. And it's like we had talked about those uncomfortable conversations. It's 8 seconds of uncomfortability, and we can build it up for months of what am I going to say? What am I going to do? And one of my mentors in recovery, one of my favorite lines from him is he says, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to go as bad as you want it to.
Well, think about your podcast. Share a little bit about that. I mean, because I'm sure that 6 months ago, this is not what you had envisioned for yourself on a Friday morning.
No, absolutely not. This honestly came from, call it God, call it what you will. I went to a BNI group for my financial coaching, business coaching company. I got a client from there. So that person was Josh. Josh introduced me to this girl, Natalie. Natalie was hosting a networking event down in Boca, about 30 minutes away from me. So I went to Natalie's networking event. At that event, I ran into David, and I ended up having lunch with David. It was an event where you have lunch with a small group of people. David and I really, really hit it off. And then I was speaking to David about some issues that I was having in business. And then David said, you need to talk to this guy, Michael. Michael runs mastermind groups. Michael's helped me so much, I call Michael and I tell him basically, Michael, look, I've got a company with dozens of employees, thousands of customers. We do millions of dollars in revenue. And I don't know a single person that I can talk to about any of this stuff. And he said to me, Andrew, I've made millions and I've lost millions, and I know how you're feeling. And just that connection, that shared experience. And I was sold. And he was like, you go to these networking events and you spend a couple hours and you can reach the people in that event. And if they know, like, and trust you, they can reach out to the people that are in their influence. However, you should really look into starting a podcast that will increase your credibility. It'll increase your reach. And, I was like, I don't know anything about it. He says, talk to David. And David's been my producer, does a great job. And all these things came together. And Eric, who does the designs for us, and he does our web design, he's incredible. And all these people, and it all stemmed from being comfortable, being uncomfortable, because that meeting where I had met the person that became my client and started this whole chain reaction, it was at, I think, 7 a.m. and it was really, really inconvenient. And I'd almost talked myself out of going, but I went anyway, turned into all these great things. But starting the podcast, I knew nothing about it, but it didn't matter. And the timing couldn't have been worse. My wife just had our kid. And I mean, we started a month or two before that, but the timing, I have every excuse in the book. I have 3 companies. I don't need to be doing this. On top of that, I don't have any experience in it. I mean, I've listened to them. I know what I like and what I don't like, but yeah, he said, do this. And I'm a huge pusher for, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to learn, I'm going to research, and I'm going to have an experience, and then I'm going to build on top of it, because I have every excuse in the world to not be doing this. I have a multi-million-dollar IT company. I don't need to be pushing the coaching practice because it's a drop in the bucket, to be honest, compared to what the other thing is. But I'm pushing myself to do more and to provide value to more people. And, maybe someone listening to this is like, I have been focusing so much on just the transaction with the customer, not building the relationship. Maybe that's the piece of advice. That's the gold nugget that I needed to hear, and that these guys keep talking about. You need to be consistent. I'm going to put together a plan every day. I'm going to spend 30 minutes implementing this. Non-negotiable. Like I've said a lot of times, my assistant, Candace, she puts together my to-do list every day of non-negotiables. And starting off today, I had 3 left over from yesterday, and I felt like such a piece of garbage. But I have someone holding me accountable, making sure that I'm continuing to do what I need to do in order to grow, because the only thing that grows on its own are weeds. and that's been my experience. I've coasted and I've seen the repercussions of coasting, and I've pushed myself past where anyone would say I need to go. I mean, to be honest, my goal with the company was to have 200 customers. That was when I started, I said, maybe someday I'll have 200 customers. And when we did that in our first year, it was like, well, then maybe we'll have 3,000, and did that. And all these things, just, it all happened. But I could have very, very easily said, I reached my goal and that's all I needed to reach. But I made the goal being a process. I know what the process will get me in the end. But the thing is, if I'm not focusing on the process, I'll never get the goals that I have set, because it's not winning the lottery. There's a lot behind it. Don't get me wrong. I did not get what I have on my own. I don't claim to have been this person who did it all and I have all the answers. I don't. I make mistakes constantly, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to have those uncomfortable 8 seconds every single day. Like when we started the show, I was like, yeah, the beginning of the show it's going to be rocky for about 8 seconds. But once you get past that, and then you embrace it and become comfortable with it, people will tell me, oh, Andrew, I'm so busy. And, there's something to be said for being busy, but do you have the right priorities in your life? There's so many different directions you can go with it. But being comfortable, being uncomfortable, that's what separates the people who it's very comfortable to go to a job that you've worked at for several years, and you know everybody, you know who you need to impress, what you can skip by on. That's very comfortable. You get paid for it. It's comfortable. Jumping out of your comfort zone, but that's where all the fun is. That's where the fruits are. But you're not going to just scratch off and then have a multi-million-dollar company. You have to put in the work. The effort that you put in doesn't have to look like what mine did. I made a million mistakes. If I could do it all over, I can repeat the process for myself. And now with coaching, I'm doing that for my clients as well, which is really, really rewarding, because as much as fixing computers is great and all, the impact that we have on our customers' lives, it's not life-changing. I mean, there's times where one person, she had her husband was overseas and their video chat wasn't working. And, I fixed the driver issue and I got to see her face, because we do it all remotely. And I got to see her face and she just broke down into tears of joy because she knew she'd be able to talk to her husband. But those experiences are few and far between. So with coaching, it's really rewarding to say, hey, your company is doing this. Here's what I did to get where I'm at. Copy my process. So John, I know we've went a little further than we probably had originally anticipated. I want to respect your time, but any closing remarks for people who are listening who want to improve their business or are trying to get sober, or maybe something that combines both?
Well, just briefly, I can tell you that when I first started in this journey 30 years ago with getting sober and starting at ground zero, a lot of promises, so to speak, were presented to me of what could be if I did these simple actions consistently. And I mean simple by making your bed, saying a prayer, or meditating in the morning. You got to start with the small, consistent actions, things that you might currently look at as being completely irrelevant. You get in my car these days, it's clean as a whistle. That's important to me. I have to be in a clean car. When I was out drinking, I had probably more recycled beer cans in my back seat than most people had in their backyard. I mean, I had piles of them. It smelled like a brewery in there. Just things like that. I'm very consistent in the morning. I get up every morning at around 5 a.m. I do a 15, 20-minute meditation. I do some reading. I get my boys up. I get them up to the bus stop, make sure they're fed, dressed, looking good. And I try to have positive talk with both of them in the car. And a lot of it for me is do the don'ts and don't the do's. And you think, well, what the hell does that mean? Well, Do the don'ts means I'm going to do everything today that I don't want to do.
Love that.
And don't do the do's. Okay. The do's for me is I want to go sit on my ass and watch my favorite TV show and drift out watching Homicide Hunter for a couple hours and just watch the day pass by. That's what I want to do. What I don't want to do is work on this script challenge that Paul Martinelli, one of our mentors, challenged me with last night, because one of my goals is to do lunch and learns, not because I need to go do lunch and learns, but it's a fear I have. It's a mountain for me right now. I can't even imagine going in front of a company and doing a presentation because I've never really done that before. But he said, study this. 30 days. You stand up. You keep reading through this every day for 30 days. And he said, you'll have enough knowledge, confidence, and be polished enough to be able to confidently go before any company and give that presentation.
That's incredible.
But it ain't like he didn't just hand me a thing and say, here you go, here, you can go out tomorrow and sign up. He says, you do this one thing every day. Consistently for 30 days. And I owned it. I owned it on the John Maxwell Facebook page. I put it out there. I put myself on blast that for 30 days, this is what I'm going to do. So last night, my wife and kids are wondering what the hell I'm doing because I read this same first page 10 times out loud. And my youngest 8-year-old's like, I don't know what the hell Dad's doing in there, but he keeps talking to himself, and it's the same stuff over and over again. But it doesn't matter. I don't know where this is going to end up. But I know it's going to end up somewhere. I'm at least stretching myself. Yeah. And I'm trying to learn something that's completely uncomfortable. This is hard for me to do. I don't have a lot of retention when I read, but I am a visual learner, so that's good. But I can tell you this much, my presentation is going to be a whole lot different in 30 days than it was last night when I first started this journey. And I'll have that confidence because you know what? I put the daily, consistent actions in every day for the next 30 days just for one thing. One thing, one goal is to do one lunch and learn, to get in front of one company. Because guess what my next goal is after this? Chris Robinson's 20-day challenge. It's on my calendar. My phone's going to notify me when I'm done with this, that's what's next, because that's my next mountain to climb.
That's incredible. That's just because you know how important personal growth is. That's not just, I need to be making some more money doing this stuff. This is pretty much, I want to grow and do what is making me uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. My business is self-run. I don't even have to be here today. I could go home and take a nap for 4 hours, and I'm going to make the same amount of money as I would sitting here. But that's the problem. When I go home and take the nap, that's what my life looks like, which is so unfulfilling. And I guarantee you there is a lot of people listening today, their lives are not even close to being fulfilled, and they're not even close to reaching their potential. So if I hope nothing else, we lit a fire under your asses to reach out to Andrew and find out, well, how do we do this? What about this mastermind stuff? Well, when are you having another mastermind? When can I jump in? Because you know what? It'll be the best decision you've ever made in your life. Andrew and I, we don't make anything on JMT. Promoting JMT, we don't make $1 on it. It's not about that for me and him. But I can tell you, reach out to him, message him, send him a text, send him an email, because he's open and willing. This is his passion.
Yeah, and every Thursday at 2, we do a live stream of the mastermind to 2 Eastern Thursday. If you're connected with us on Facebook, I post the Zoom link. The last one, too many people joined, and so I had to upgrade, get the paid version, but they've earned my $7 for sure. But John, it was so great having you on the show, and I really, really appreciate your time. And for anyone who's listening, be sure to subscribe, rate the show. I really appreciate everyone. Extremely grateful for the opportunity, and hopefully you got something out of it. And John, take care.
All right, buddy. Have a great day.
Hey, this is Andrew, and I just wanted to thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. As you know, I'm a business coach, and if you're interested in taking your business to the next level, go to lassisecoaching.com/30. That's LASSISE coaching.com/30 and sign up for a free 30-minute business coaching session. I've helped tons of entrepreneurs grow their businesses from pure chaos to 6, 7, and even 8-figure operations. Heck, I even 48x'd my own company from year 1 to year 2, and I know I can do the same for you because I've been there and I want to help. So that's lassisecoaching.com/30. And again, thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober, and be